Welcome to the Hidden City Podcast. I'm Grant.
And I'm Doug, and we're here to share some of the incredible stories and people from Oak Cliff that you might not know.
We're going to sit down with some of the visionaries, craftsmen, and business owners who have shaped Oak Cliff into what it is today.
Oak Cliff is on the south bank of the Trinity River, a few miles south of downtown Dallas. While technically it was part of Dallas, it was its own city for a long time, and it still has that independent spirit.
We'll dive into the history and the spirit of this place, exploring the different challenges and successes that defined it.
This is The Hidden City, a podcast about the people and the stories that make Oak Cliff extraordinary. Well, welcome to the Hidden City Podcast. This is our first episode, and Grant and I are finally creating this thing. We love this neighborhood, Oak Cliff, and we're excited you're here. Yeah,
it's been a long time in the making, dude. We're hoping to do this years ago. We tried to do it years ago, so it's fun to kind of finally be at the first episode and jumping back in. It's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I feel like we're jumping into the first episode, but we're also like got friends helping us. We're in this awesome space. It feels right and a good time too. So, I guess the question, we kind of wrote some questions down just for us to kind of we're going to interview ourselves for this first episode and tell y'all a little bit of why we're doing this podcast, why we're going on this journey, some of the hopes that we're wanting to achieve, and maybe some of the people that we want to try to bring on the show. But yeah, Grant, why are we doing this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why are we adding to our plate another thing?
I love it. I love that question. Yeah. Well, we love this place, man. We've grown to really love it. We're brothers, by the way, in case that wasn't abundantly clear. Doug and I are 5 years apart, and both get to run some businesses over in Oak Cliff area. So we've loved Oak Cliff ever since we've been over here, but we didn't grow up here. We initially were in East Dallas growing up, which has some similar vibes to Oak Cliff. But man, I just feel like we fell in love with the people here, the culture, the amazing history that this place has. And I think we just felt like we hadn't seen anybody really doing this and talking about it. So we were like, let's
do it.
Let's
jump
go
into
ahead
it.
and start.
Let's start interviewing people. Yeah, I think that's a good first kind of like thing is like what makes Oak Cliff unique. And I know a second ago we were talking about just this neighborhood being something that we're drawn to, and honestly a lot of friends and different people that we've known and looked up to have also been drawn to this place. And so I would say, to answer my own question, what makes it unique, Oak Cliff has been something that has almost been, people see Dallas and they think of so many things like it being new and growing, and Oak Cliff seems like this thing that like people don't really interact with a ton, for good or for bad. But it has its own life and identity and amazing things that are happening here. And so when we first interacted with it, or when I did, my wife and I moved to Oak Cliff. It's been years now, but we've just like loved getting to know the businesses, the people, the different kind of movements that are happening. And it feels different than Dallas, and it feels special. So yeah, that's part of the reason. But what do you think makes Oak Cliff unique?
Oh man, I would agree with you that the people, the history. I kind of brought that up a minute ago, but like Oak Cliff has this history that is pretty extraordinary when you look at it in the context of DFW. It was its own city, hence part of the reason for the podcast's name. Up until 1903. When it got annexed by Dallas on like kind of a sketchy, vote that was resisted by people in Oak Cliff, but then ultimately went through. So it's got already sort of a independence to it that I don't think ever really left, even though it was kind of subsumed into Dallas. I think it's still kept its unique character. And so,
a lot of people jumping in on that. It gets maybe overused, but like people refer to it as the Brooklyn to Dallas, like almost like a Manhattan and Brooklyn kind of vibe. We were reading some stuff earlier, and someone said it was the Cambridge of the South, which was hilarious.
Where the breeze blows first.
That's it. That was some of the
There's so many good early advertisements. For this
Yeah, and it's, I mean, we can kind of go into that, and I'm sure we will in other episodes. Hopefully, that's one of the things is like we get to meet some historians and kind of get to understand that story from early on. But there's, it's totally unique, and it feels that way. And I think when people start to see the people here and see some of the stuff that's happening, they feel that too, and they start to get drawn in like we have.
I think so. I mean, I remember when I first started, spending time over here, I was working off of Davis Street, near the Kessler, and, got to become familiar with Nova and all these, Lockhart's and all these great little restaurants along Davis that were just so iconic. And then starting to go to the Texas Theater and starting to kind of realize like there's a lot of unique parts to this area that I think we're spoiled with. And so, yeah, I'd say then going to like Go Cliff events and seeing Bastille and Bishop for the first time and getting to meet people through that. I mean, all of those things kind of, like you said, draw people in. And I think when they experience it, they're like, oh, I want to understand what this is. And a lot of people just move here. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of the first ways I started coming here was really I was into photography, and all the photographers I knew were over in Oak Cliff. And so it was a lot of artists that were just kind of calling this place their home. And it's been fun learning that over time too, just how many artists there have been, all the way back to, the most legendary, like one of the Texas Impressionist painters. What's his name again? Oh,
Frank Ray.
Frank Ray, that's right. He had his studio here in the early 1900s. And so you've got this like kind of fun, again, that goes in line with that Brooklyn-ish vibe, or even something that, it has history and community that's been built up over time. And so, I think there's
some real icons for sure. You got Frank Ray, you've got Bonnie and Clyde. I think Bonnie or Clyde, someone's going to have to fact check this, like one of the two, I think it was Clyde maybe, grew up in this area. And then you've got Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was a legendary musician who grew up here. You've got T-Bone Walker. You've got this like history of culture and music and some edginess. Lee Harvey Oswald, speaking of an edgy character, it has a little bit of roughness to it, but as any good place should, like it's not perfectly planned, or it's got character.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we could go on forever about how unique Oak Cliff is. I mean, what I guess one of the other questions we have in this too is like, why did we plan, or why did we put our roots in Oak Cliff, and what are those? I think that's something that, yes, we're drawn to Oak Cliff and we've come to Oak Cliff a lot, but there's things that we've done, like we said earlier, we're business partners and brothers. And so we get to run a couple of different things here in the neighborhood. And so I think that's maybe sharing a little bit about that and, what comes from that.
We run Wax Space, which is where we're currently at. We're in the podcast studio. So if you're ever looking for a place to do some podcasting, come see us. But we're lucky enough to kind of find out about Tyler Station. Doug, you were really the one that discovered Tyler Station, in our relationship. You found it, you moved over here, but obviously we started a business together with your wife, Kelsey, and then took on Wax Space from the two guys that I first interned with when I graduated from college, which was pretty cool. And so we're in Elmwood, which is like, one of many awesome neighborhoods in Oak Cliff. We're in Tyler Station, which is this old Dixie wax paper manufacturing plant that was converted into so many cool things. And we've had a really good time, I think, getting involved in this building and putting our roots right here in Elmwood.
Yeah. And I think that's been a fun thing. I mean, Tyler Station's pretty central to a lot of what we've done, just kind of getting our roots in. I'd say, yeah, Monty Anderson, him, like he did the Belmont Hotel and then kind of came over and started this, and getting to be there when it was still being built was pretty fun, but also sometimes hectic. But yeah, like Grant said, we started the TX studio and ended up getting to sell that to Timmy and Afrotina Coker, and been putting energy into Wax Space, and we're also part of the Go Oak Cliff ownership team too now. So it's fun getting to advocate for this neighborhood and really just learn, because I think it's got a lot of people that are contributing to it in a lot of different ways, and that's been fun to see through things like. Actually, one of the things we do at Wax Space was Texas Talks, which is inviting neighborhood leaders in to kind of come in and give a TED Talk kind of thing on the neighborhood, and that's kind of scratched the surface. But I feel like this podcast is something that will get to allow us to maybe take it a step deeper and even connect with people who maybe aren't wanting to necessarily give a talk to 40 people, but want to jump in a room and chat through their stories and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I'm actually really looking forward to introducing folks to all the amazing small business owners and just people that like live in this area and do amazing stuff. But, you wouldn't necessarily run into them on the street and strike up a conversation about some of their fun stories. I think we want to bring those to light. So there's just going to be no shortage of that. We've got a long list of people we're excited to chat with, and obviously y'all will be hearing those soon.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
What else are you looking forward to with this, Doug? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things I'm looking forward to, is bringing people into Wax Space, into the studio, and getting to interview and hang out with them and connect. But right now there's a lot of people that we also don't know, or that we'd like to give an opportunity to talk to and share this stuff. We're getting to produce this in a pretty awesome way on video and audio, and we're coming out the gate strong with this. And so I think that's some of the story for this. And what I'm looking forward to is like the people we don't know and the ones that we get to connect with. Who knows? Like it could be different chefs coming up. It could be different like neighborhood advocates. You and I are pretty connected and know quite a few people, but then there's a whole bunch of stories that we just have no idea. So that's the surprises, I think, are what I'm looking forward to.
So Doug, thinking about people we might talk to as this podcast develops, who's your ultimate Oak Cliff interview? Who would be the top of your list if you could pick anybody?
That's a great question. The one that comes to mind immediately is he just did his Netflix special. He's a barber in Oak Cliff. What's his name? Ralph Barbosa, maybe.
That's it.
I think that would be hilarious. That'd be a fun one. Don't know him at all, but that'd be good. What about you?
Okay, so my number one get would be Dennis Rodman. Grew up in Oak Cliff, iconic figure. He went to North Korea, which is wild. Insane to me. So like, I don't know what that conversation would even look like, but if he ever wanted to come on and talk about Oak Cliff and his history, we'd love to have him.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Oak Cliff, man. There's so much. I feel like it's, running this co-working space with you and getting to be co-owners on it, I feel like we get to meet a ton of people. And so that's one of the things too, is we've got a kind of a fun vantage point of just like seeing people who have just moved in and want to connect, or people who have been in the neighborhood for a long time and know it's special and know what makes it special, and sometimes don't want it to change at all. But I think, that's like fun, starting to kind of uncover and discover like what makes this place special, and who are those people that would be fun to bring to the table and interview.
What would you say to somebody who's like, I don't know what Oak Cliff is, but
yeah, you're talking about Oak Cliff a lot. What is this?
Yeah, like you're really hot on Oak Cliff, but I don't know where that is or what it is.
Yeah.
We've kind of explained some of it, but like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, for sure. How do you describe Oak Cliff? So
in this podcast too, like why should they tune in?
Yeah, so Oak Cliff is, it's a neighborhood in Dallas, Texas. We've said Oak Cliff maybe like 400 times in this episode so far.
Our SEO is going to be through the roof for Oak Cliff.
Oak Cliff. It's a neighborhood in Dallas. It's one of the oldest neighborhoods neighborhoods in Dallas. And on a map, it actually, if you would take the map of Oak Cliff and you would flip it up, it would go into like far North Dallas, Plano, Richardson, kind of. It like covers a lot of space. And so there's a lot of neighborhoods in Oak Cliff. We're kind of currently in Elmwood, which is really the like dead center of Oak Cliff. And so, yeah, I mean, most people know, if you're familiar with Dallas, Bishop Arts is a neighborhood that, just people have known because it's just completely taken off. It was like the old train, like trolley stop, right? And it's been turned into, it was art co-ops for a while, and then became retail, and now it's like just, it's to the moon. So it's its own like center. And I know that's one of the stories that we're looking forward to tell someday too, is some of the beginnings of that. But yeah, Oak Cliff, I mean, the story of Oak Cliff, it's so easy to get into the history of some of this stuff, but it's complicated. It's also like, started out with like a strong urban planning kind of vibe. Like it was thought out and was really much attracting, like trying to attract kind of like as the city was starting, almost like its secondary like downtown of sorts. And so you have things like Jefferson Boulevard, which is kind of what I've been told before is like Oak Cliff's downtown.
And it's the coolest street, I think, in all of
North Dallas.
All
of North
DFW.
Texas. Yeah,
I mean,
all of
it's
North
like
Texas. It's amazing. It feels
perfectly laid out.
Yeah,
So cool.
I feel like we get to go to California a bit for work, and a lot of these cities and towns have like a drag that just goes through like a boulevard, and it's pretty cool that Dallas has that. And so, but yeah, one of the sayings is like, so goes Jefferson Boulevard, so goes Oak Cliff. And so I think that's tied so much to Oak Cliff, that like center kind of like downtown-ish thing. And so people in Dallas sometimes just have no idea that it's got its own story and place. And so, but yeah, I think that's how I'd answer some of that. I mean, we could keep going on big pictures of like stages of Oak Cliff. But like what comes to mind when you think of that?
Well, yeah, you were hitting on the early history, and I can't wait to do this episode because this history is really intriguing to me. As Thomas Marsalis and I think it was John S. Armstrong, who basically as early as the 1880s were here and sort of came together as entrepreneurs, but also businessmen, real estate guys who wanted to lay out this town. And they had this falling out, and one of them went and decided that he was going to do his own development north, and one of them stayed here, and that development north was Highland Park. And so there's like a really interesting, complicated connection between Highland Park and Oak Cliff, which I don't know what to do with, but I'm kind of interested in somebody explaining that history, because I think it's kind of fascinating. But yeah, you were right. Like early on, it was seen as a almost like not a resort town, but like they had Lake Cliff development, and it was like,
which, by the way, if no one's seen photos of Lake Cliff, it was wild. I mean, what was it? Water. Like
there was like
water
roller coasters and water rides,
yes,
like
water
log
rides,
cabin or log.
It's
like
got a
toboggan
whole,
rides, whatever.
yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
like
it was insane.
It was like a theme park, and you go by Lake Cliff today, and it's beautiful, and a lot of green space, but it's kind of weird to think of all the stories that were there before that. And so, that was like a wild kind of like start to it, and a lot of energy going to that. And then, what would you say? It just kind of continued.
There's like a whole history. We're going to get into it. We don't have time to get into it today, but stay tuned, because there's a lot to hear about, and we'll hope you'll just join us for this journey, and tell us what you think about these stories. Tell us what you're interested in hearing more about too.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Hidden City. We hope you discovered something about Oak Cliff that you didn't know. If you enjoyed the show, I hope you subscribe to it on YouTube, and then follow us on any of the podcasting platforms. Also, if you enjoyed it, please share with a friend, and thanks so much for tuning in.